As a Christian supporter of Israel, has the whole judicial reform issue kind of left you confused and wondering what in the world is going on? On today's show, I'm going to fact check some crazy myths regarding the issue that have been floating around Christian circles in Israel and the United States, as well as give you some simple facts about the reform so that you can be more informed on the whole discussion. You don't want to miss today's show. I'm Josiah, and this is the Israel Guys. That video was Israeli soldiers entering Jenin just last night in a raid of the city. They arrested a leader of Hamas as well as a senior member of the Jenin brigades. According to reports, live fire was exchanged, as you heard in the video, during the raid, but no casualties were reported, thank God. Welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of Jew hatred and anti-Israel propaganda, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Welcome back to the show, guys. We've been covering Israel's judicial reform quite a bit here at the Israel Guys, but only because it is such a hot topic in Israel right now. There is so much misinformation being put out, not only from the mainstream media, but also the left-wing media organizations here in Israel. We are trying to give you an accurate picture of the facts, as well as what is happening on the ground in Israel, without all the emotional hype of the mainstream media. I came across an article just this week that I found to be almost unbelievable. Now, this article was put out by a leader of the Messianic community in Israel about the judicial reforms. Now, I don't know this person personally, but I have studied Israel's judicial reforms enough to know that the information that was put in this article is either completely false or largely skewed. The only reason I'm talking about it on today's show is because, unfortunately, this is the information that is being given to a big part of the Israel-loving Christian community in the U.S. and around the world. As a Christian Zionist who has worked in Israel for a number of years, I want to try and give you a more accurate picture of the facts of the matter. Let's dive into the article. The article is titled Myths and Facts About Israel's Judicial Overhaul. So this article goes through and cites a myth about a particular issue or part of the judicial reform, and then gives his facts about that particular issue as well. The first myth here is the present coalition is Israel's democratically elected government. The people voted for these reforms. So that's his myth. Then he goes into his fact. There is no such thing as a democratically elected government in Israel. Don't get me wrong, Israel is a democratic nation, but our elections do not work like they do in America, where you vote for a president and his platform. In Israel, you vote for a party, and then the leader of the party with the most votes must negotiate and horse trade in order to form a coalition of at least 51% of the Knesset seats. In this situation, he will have to compromise and make deals to get people to join. When he makes these compromises, he may end up doing things that he did not promise to do in order to build a government. So that was his facts of that myth there. Here's my fact check here. You can't have a democratic government without democratic elections. Israel is a Jewish and democratic nation. Voting for your party of choice is actually, believe it or not, democratic. Voting for a party of your choice is actually democratic. The party that receives the most votes in the election, the head of that party will become the prime minister. All right, so myth number 2 he goes into, he says, quote, the law passed by the Knesset on Sunday, July 23rd will serve to strengthen Israel's democracy, not weaken it. Now for his fact. Quote, today on CNN, Prime Minister Netanyahu told Wolf Blitzer that the law that they passed on Sunday would strengthen Israel's democracy, not weaken it. The law he is referring to is where the Supreme Court can overrule a decision by the government that is deemed unreasonable. Prime Minister Netanyahu sought to make it seem that reasonableness was a weak arbitrary standard, but in truth, it is a legal term that finds its roots in various legal traditions and influences. Israel's legal system draws inspiration from Jewish law, halakha, British common law, and legal principles adopted by other Western legal systems. I'm continuing with his facts of the issue. Taking away This device of the Supreme Court to declare government decisions unreasonable will destabilize Israel's democratic nature because canceling that standard would remove the only tool for reviewing arbitrary and highly unreasonable decisions by the government. There is no other check on the government's decisions since the executive and legislature are one. Fact check. Canceling the reasonableness standard does not remove the only tool for reviewing decisions passed by the government. The Supreme Court is supposed to review and strike down laws passed by the government if those laws contradict Israel's quasi-constitution, the 13 Basic Laws. While it is true that Israel has no official constitution, Israel's 13 Basic Laws have served for the past 75 years as a basis of laws that the Supreme Court can uphold. We'll be right back with more myths to bust, but first, in a world where hunger still touches the lives of many, there's a chance for us to make a difference. Today, we bring you the story of hope and compassion, the story of feeding more than 8,000 hungry Holocaust survivors and Ukrainian refugees. This number grows daily, and the need for food and sustenance becomes more urgent. But United Soup Kitchens has taken action. They have established 22 public restaurants serving free, home-cooked meals with honor and dignity. But they can't do it alone. No one should ever go hungry. Today, you have the opportunity to change lives. Your donation today is an act of love and kindness, an opportunity to fulfill God's commandment. Together, we can ensure that no one is left behind and that every soul finds warmth and sustenance. Your contribution will transform lives, offering hope and dignity to those who have endured unimaginable hardships. Join us today, donate now, and participate in this incredible mission of compassion and support. Together, let's feed the hungry, nurture the spirit, and create a world where no one goes without a meal. The power to change lives is in your hands. Click the link below to donate today and let your kindness shine. All right, jumping into myth number 3 in this article, it says the protesters don't represent the nation. Most people back the judicial reform. So he's saying this is the myth. Fact, 66% of Israelis are against the reforms. 47% of the members of Netanyahu's own Likud party are against the reforms. 70% want the ruling coalition, Netanyahu and the opposition leaders, Lapid and Gantz, to meet together to decide on a way forward for judicial reform. When 5%, 500,000 people of the entire nation go out on a Saturday night to protest, it is clear that the majority of the nation is concerned. Imagine nearly 17 million Americans gathering to protest. I don't believe that has ever happened, but that is what we are talking about, end quote. So that was his facts. Fact check. Well, I don't know exactly where these poll numbers that he's pulling from this article come from. I do know that a majority of Israelis do want judicial reform. Now, you may not know this, but this is not a new topic in Israel. And politicians from both sides of the political aisle have been calling for reform to the judicial system for several years. It is only because the current democratically elected conservative government is trying to pass those reforms that the left is having a tantrum. While it is also probably true that most Israelis want there to be some sort of consensus from both the left and the right on what exactly the reforms should look like, throughout this entire process, there have been many attempts by Netanyahu's government to hold compromise talks with the opposition, but none of them resulted in any meaningful progress, mainly because the leaders of the opposition have not shown any good faith compromises to the legislation. All right, myth number 4. Israel will still have checks and balances between the legislative and executive branch. Fact, quote, in Israel, the executive branch and the legislative branch are one and the same. The prime minister, executive, is the head of the coalition, which is made up of at least 51% of the Knesset, the legislator. By definition, the opposition, the Knesset members who are not in the coalition, is less than 50%, therefore has no legal authority to be a check or balance against the coalition. They can make noise, but that is about it. Fact check. Israel actually will still have checks and balances between the legislative and executive branches of government because this reasonableness law that was just passed in the Knesset changes nothing between the relationship between the executive and legislative branches. the prime minister has to have the full support of his coalition to pass anything big like this in the government. And let me tell you, in Israel, that is no guaranteed tax to have the full support of your coalition as prime minister. All right, myth number 5. The protests in Israel are just from the far left. Ready for his fact? Quote, Israel is a center-right country. In the present Knesset, less than 4% of the seats belonging to a left-wing party. Labor Party has 4 seats, which is 3.75% of the vote. The entire representation of Israeli left-wing is 4 seats out of 120. There are 51 seats in the right. There are 12 seats in the center-right. There are 24 seats in the center, 18 seats in the religious, who tend to caucus with the right, and just 4 on the left. So when 500,000 people protest, which represents at least 5 million, half the country, it is impossible to say that they are merely far-left protesters. Fact check. While it is true that Israel could be called a center-right country, there are way more than 4 seats belonging to the left-wing bloc. The 24 seats that he called center, the seats of Yair Lapid's party, while they call themselves the center of the political spectrum, they are actually in practice and in policy left of center, therefore left wing. Also, he left out out of this breakdown that he put in here of the Knesset seat, he left out the 10 Arab seats in the Knesset, which could be considered left of the left because they vote against anything that will benefit the Jewish state of Israel. Just because there are 500,000 people protesting, that does not represent at least 5 million people. I do not know where that assumption came from in this article. It is true that there are people from both sides of the political spectrum protesting, but let me tell you, the vast majority is the left and far left in Israel, mainly due to the fact that the leaders of the opposition, Yair Lapid and Benny Gantz, have been stirring them up with false accusations and misinformation against Netanyahu's government and threatening civil war. There is no talk of civil war from the right, mind you, but only from the left, which is actually the minority in Israel. I want to make clear that I have nothing personal against the person who wrote this article. They are most likely wrote it in good faith, trying to help people understand their perspective. The problem is they themselves have been lied to by the left and the media. I encourage you guys, our listeners, if you don't know who to believe in issues like this, topics you don't quite understand, do some research for yourself. Read the actual judicial reforms. Look into how Israel's political system works. Most of all, continue to pray for and support the nation of Israel. While Israel is not heading for civil war, as the media would like you to believe, the temperature in Israel is indeed a little heated. Pray for the nation to unify as a Jewish state. Please pray that Israelis would come together and be able to see eye to eye as Jewish brothers and sisters. Meanwhile, here at the Israel Guys, we'll continue to bring you the accurate reports from the land of Israel. Guys, don't forget to subscribe and get that conversation going down in the comments below. Also, like this video if you enjoy what the Israel Guys puts out. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of the Israel Guys. Check out our social media pages down in the description below. And as always, tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening here in the land of Israel. We'll be back every day, Monday through Friday, with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel. We need you to come to the land of Israel to play your part in bringing Israel's forest back to life. October 17th through November 6th, we have a team of volunteers joining us in Israel for one mission: to plant trees in Judea and Samaria, Israel's biblical heartland. For 2,000 years, this area of Israel has lain desolate and barren, and even though groups have planted trees in the rest of Israel over the last 100 years, Judea and Samaria have been neglected due to political sensitivities. No more. Our mission is to plant 20,000 trees in the biblical heartland this year, and this 2-week volunteer trip will play a huge role in that. Join us for a hard-working, unforgettable volunteer experience in Israel's heartland this year. You may be surprised at how much a trip like this can change your life. To find out more, go to serveisrael.com/volunteer or just click the link in the description below. Don't wait though, because time is running out to sign up. The deadline to register is September 26th. That's not that far away. If you love God, Israel, and are ready for a hard-working adventure in the land of Israel, sign up for our tree planting volunteer program at serveisrael.com/volunteer, or just do it. Click the link in the description below.